Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Walker. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, Walker and Ramirez are working on a case. Obviously, it's kind of a stakeout, which I love. Walker being who he is, and even, their captain, James talks about it later on about how Walker is a, talker. And so obviously he's trying to use this opportunity to get to know Ramirez. It's like, well, we're partners and we should get to know a little bit more about each other. He's like trying to figure out her middle name. And it's like, Michelle, Rochelle. It's just like Michelle, Rochelle. He's like, yeah, Michelle, Rochelle. What also, once again, just always that little interesting thing about casting and stuff like that. Like obviously the person there after this episode is Sharon Toretta, who, it's like a weapons dealer, which interestingly enough is played by the actress who played a later version of Meg in Supernatural. She even made a final appearance in the final season, like near the end of the series, like literally like the last couple episodes, as the empty, choosing the form of Meg, or at least like the last body she was in. But I was just like, man, dude, that's just so cool. I love that. But this case gets complicated, especially for Walker. It's because, well, for one, when they were on the stakeout, they went inside the strip club, and lo and behold, the stripper that was dancing tipped Sharon off, and they were able to bounce. But not just any regular bounce; they bounced out with Mickey's truck, her new truck at that. Also. Walker's bobblehead, which was very significant to him because, we had that flashback at the beginning of him and his wife, her actually teaching him how to drive clutch. Turns out, looking back on those memories, we find out that's actually when he found, that was around the time he found out she was pregnant with Stella, so it's just, especially because how this all ties into with Hoyt. Because he's an old friend of Walker's. They grew up together. They played football together. But Hoyt kind of comes from like a complicated family situation. And even to the point Walker's dad was kind of like, all right, we might as well hide the good stuff. It's like, she's like, but his mom is like, stop. And he's like, come on. We know that kid's trouble. But she's like, he might not be blood, but he is still family, So obviously he kind of is a little more like, all right, sure, fine. I'll go along with what you want. Obviously it's complicated, like I said, for Walker because Hoyt is connected. At the very least, he's working with Sharon. It's not too much of a surprise for Walker because Hoyt has been the troublemaker beforehand. And now it puts Walker in this compromising position because at first he is ready to confront him, but it's like, well, honestly, there is no evidence that it was Hoyt. He knows it's Hoyt. Even later on, it's like, oh, James ended up piecing it together that it was Hoyt, but it's like, there's nothing. Because even later on, his dad was, Mickey is talking to his dad. It's like, why would, I should go in there and it's like, you can't do anything. Because if there was any evidence to say that he actually did it, Walker would have arrested him by now. So, but even him later on being like, give it enough time, Hoyt's going to give you basically the rope you need to, take him down. He's going to slip up at some point and you'll be able to, he's going to stretch himself too far and end up, getting taken down. But it is this complicated thing of this is someone that is like your friend. And because I think not only do they have their history, but also I think that history also connects to Emily too. So I think for him that plays a part and it comes up later on where it's like, he has a hard time, Walker has a blind spot when it comes to people from his past. And especially Hoyt being such a good friend, but it's obviously them being on two different sides of the law, his friend being a criminal. And it's not like that's something new for Walker. He's always known, because even him and his brother were joking about oh, have you been here and here? And then Stella's like, is that an inside joke? He's like, yeah, those are all prisons, so. But what I thought was a dope thing is you had, Walker's dad and James both saying basically have Walker's back because he's going to justify this by being he's doing his job keeping an eye on Hoyt, but truth be told is that's his blind spot, so as his partner you got to have his back. So when the opportunity comes later on, she does arrest him. And Walker's like, what are you doing? And it's like, I'm having your back. Because part of me, because she had actually, I figured as much that when she looks at her and when she looks at Walter and, Walker, I'm so sorry. Early morning recordings always kind of my brain's a little scattered. I'm sorry, but when she looked at Walker and Hoyt, it probably reminded. I figured it would probably reminded her of the her and Garrison, like person she had mentioned earlier on, like kind of like a cautionary tale of like, yeah, you used to get in trouble all the time, and I think she saw a little bit of that with Walker. Especially because I'm sure like there are direct parallels. They're not just sure. They're definitely direct parallels between her and Garrison and Walker and Hoyt. So she is trying to look out for them, their partners and everything. So, and I don't think it is just a situation of, well, if Walker's crossing the line and not doing what he's supposed to, it's not just about reflection, like the bad reflection on her. It is just hey, I'm trying to keep my partner in line, keep him on the right side of things and not letting this whole circumstance compromise him. I mean, because it's so sad about the Hoyt thing too, because obviously it's like you see how dear she is to Walker's mom, but also like Jerry, him doing that whole thing of like, why don't you finally make me an honest man? And she's like, I don't think there's a damn person here that can make an honest man out of you. And she's like, and you don't need, where's the ring? And he presents something to her, and it's just kind of like, she's like, all right, let's just sit down. It's like that charm of his kind of wore her down. But when Mickey is interrogating him, he gives them a location, but location ends up being a bust because the only thing there is Emily's car and the bobblehead and everything. But he left a note and everything, so it's like they were one step ahead. But Walker remembers the unit that they were at earlier where the car was stored and everything, so he's like, oh, I know exactly where they actually are. And even Hoyt calling up Walker's mom being like, yeah, sorry, I won't be able to go mushroom hunting with you. And she's like, she kind of knows from the call, like, oh, him saying, maybe another time, like she feels like, oh, something's about to go down. I won't see you for a while. Because they never really went into it, but essentially she took him in because, like, obviously he has a very complicated family thing. Even her saying, like, you aren't your family. Just because your family's criminals doesn't mean you have to be. And because she's the one or the few people that's ever probably never let his past define him in her eyes. Whereas everyone else, it's like, he plays it off, but I think it's still that thing of having that one person in your corner see you a way that no one else does. Sees past your family, sees you past your troubles. I think it made him feel even more guilty because he does care about her. I'm sure she was probably always like a mom to him. And I think for him, it's like, yeah, you're always kind of like a another son to me. So, but just when she hangs up the phone, like you can tell, like, look like she knows, like, oh, like he's in trouble again, and he doesn't know how this whole thing's going to end up playing out. But the whole operation got shut down. And he's driving away. He manages to get in the truck again, and Walker and Mickey are pretty like calm about it. I'm like, they're probably going to be able to shut that down. And it's like, yep. She's like, oh, I should have gotten used to these features earlier, because Walker was like, oh, have you actually tested out any features? And I love that coming full circle like that. So, and even Hoyt being like, all right, you guys got me. And Mickey confides in Walker about, what happened to Garrison, that basically he kept always skirting the line until he crossed it, and basically went over the edge. What that necessarily means, whether that means just like, hey, got a little trouble here and there, but eventually he got to the point it was like in the big leagues and maybe he's in jail right now. You could almost also interpret that as he got in so much trouble, he got into the big leagues and he got killed because of it. I think it's the former rather than the latter, but it's a thing for, Mickey was trying to get across to Walker, like, you can't just be friends with everybody, whether it's the whole Stella situation because you're trying to be her friend, or the Hoyt thing, like you're trying to be his buddy, but it's like sometimes you kind of have to put your foot down because it's like, look at this Hoyt situation. It's like, you doing this is actually a good thing because this prevents him, because this could have gotten a lot worse because probably him being even more directly involved in this, things could have gotten even worse for him. And, so like cutting it off right here and now is at least maybe this can start putting him in the right direction of like kind of correcting things. But, as she had said, like, I forgot the exact wording to it, but basically it's like the easy route isn't always the best choice, that basically some difficulties are necessary. It's a good thing to, forge your character and, put you down the right path. Because she was saying that because obviously, his leniency towards Stella, which obviously she's taking it a little more serious about a lot of stuff because, even that whole bit between her and August, which I brought that up last episode. I thought it was kind of neat. Like, I was wondering what their relationship looked like because present day, we never got to see a lot of scenes between them. So to have that opportunity now, I thought was pretty dope. But it's just like that little banter back and forth of him kind of comparing like them being in school to like, she's like, oh, you haven't done the Attenborough, you haven't brought that out in a while. Him putting on a British accent, kind of, doing kind of that, I guess, Nat Geo type of like vibe to it. But Stella turned down going to like a bonfire because she's like, yeah, I'm about to have my court date. Probably not the best idea to do that. It's like, yeah, but your dad's like a super Texas Ranger or whatever. So like he'll cover it, which is like kind of effed up that your friends went there. And I was like wondering whether that was going to wear her down, but she's like, nah, I'm cool. But then, you have August being like, oh, I'm going to go because Ruby invited me, yeah, let's do that. Which Stella ultimately ends up going because she finds out that her mom started it. The bonfire thing. And then, August is there and he gets drunk and ends up kind of embarrassing himself in front of the girl he likes. I think that's going to cause problems later on. We'll probably see that storyline kind of continue. But him being a little drunk, he kind of says some stuff I'm sure he wishes he could take back, where it's like, do you want to push him away? And she's like, what? It's like basically saying, the way you're acting, it's like you getting in trouble and stuff like that. You're going to push him away. Like he's going to go away and not go. And that's effed up because obviously, but August is like the one who's like, he tries to be the extra good kid. And he's also the one who bears, like they're both dealing with things in their own way. He's trying to be like the best possible because I think maybe he feels like maybe on some level, it's like, hey, if I'm the best possible, then like maybe, Dad will stick around or something. And Stella is just acting up because, she's kind of feeling a little lost, obviously without their mom and, the dad not being around. So, but that, you could tell that cut her deep. Like, don't say that. Like, of course I want him around. That's all I've ever wanted, and it's sad, because I'm sure it hurts hearing your own brother like talk like that. Like, what? Don't know. And even suggesting that she might be the reason why he might leave again. Like, that's actually messed up. To be fair, wasn't thinking clear, but to be fair, he was drinking, so it kind of brought up some stuff that he might have been keeping buried. So that in itself is kind of an interesting thing because August hasn't really been 100% honest. He buries a lot of stuff, much like Walker. So Stella's at least a little more honest with her feelings, and very blunt about it. I feel like August kind of, like I said, buries a lot of stuff, and so I think this was a moment of that coming out, and maybe that's kind of a sign of like what we can kind of expect later on. Couldn't call her dad, so she ended up calling her uncle. And then, like, it's like, oh, and then, like, her uncle SO was like, oh, come on, you can't bail Stella out whenever. It's like, yeah, but it's August, he's drunk. And he's like, what? Come on, let's go. It's like, are we done with the cakes? Yeah, we're done with the cakes. Like, a drunk August? He's like, I'm not going to miss this. So luckily they showed up. And, they were in the car, it was kind of a nice bonding moment. And, like, August put on the radio singing and everyone's kind of singing along. Because Liam was like, are you going to, Stella was asking Liam if he was going to be there for her court. And he was like, I can't. He's like, at the end of the day, this is your dad's decision. And obviously he doesn't want her to get special treatment to the point he doesn't show, he's not going to be there. Plus Walker, when the time comes, doesn't show up as, in his Ranger, uniform because he doesn't want it to be like, oh, if I show up like that, then you're going to get leniency because it's going to be like, oh, you're a Texas Ranger. It's like he doesn't want to send the wrong message. He wants Stella to suffer the consequences of what she does. Like, who I am shouldn't allow her to kind of, benefit and skirt the line, which obviously the ironic parallels between, well, not really irony. Well, to a certain point, it was irony, like the parallels between that and the whole Hoyt situation. But obviously, he handled it. It ultimately had to play out the way it did. So he had to kind of treat Stella like he did Hoyt at the end of the day. Like, you did something, you have to, pay the price for it. So there's other things I thought was interesting too. Like, obviously with Walker's mom and dad, where she's like, no, I'll do the mushroom hunting myself. And he's like, I'm sorry about Hoyt. And, she was talking about like, you need a specific knife to cut the mushrooms. And he was basically saying like, is that kind of all like a metaphor? Is that for you or, Hoyt? And she's like, I'm just talking about mushrooms. And he was like, I miss you. She's like, me too. And I'm like, I'm curious, like obviously where their issue stemmed from. Was it something that was already happening before Emily died, or was it like the fallout of Emily dying, taking in August and Stella, along with Walker not being there? Like, did that kind of put a strain on a relationship? Was there some, maybe she hasn't quite been the same since. Maybe they in general haven't, because they haven't really 100% been on the same page with a lot of stuff. Because like I said, that you could definitely tell that Hoyt thing like hit her hard. Because I forgot to bring it up, but she referenced like, oh, you saved Walker's life, and I'm like, we never really got into what that was all about. But I think it's just that so much is changing, and just like it's hard to hold on to the past. Like that nothing can stay the same like it was, because so many things are changing, and it doesn't seem like Walker's dad's the biggest proponent on change. At least I don't feel like. So I think that kind of puts them in a place where I think they're kind of a little stuck right now, So another interesting element is the Mickey and Jerry thing, which, obviously she shows up, pays for a shot, but also is like, yeah, here's that thing. He's not, obviously before he left town, he wanted you to have this. She's like, I'm sorry, I was just doing my job, which Jerry kind of busts her balls a little bit, but I think we might be seeing kind of a friendship in that regard. So I think that's going to be neat to see where that might go, especially because like I think these are like two important women in, Walker's life. So for them to kind of be able to touch base and kind of, someone who's known Walker for a while and someone who's just kind of new to him and his life and just everything. So I did also really like the ending. It was very sweet. It's like, well, obviously her license is getting revoked and she's got to like do community service and got to pay off a fine. And so it's like, well, before you got one more day with your license, so do you know how to drive stick? So, hey, he's teaching her, obviously. It looks like it might be the exact same road that Emily had taught him too. It was actually really sweet too, because I didn't talk about it, but the car is actually named Stella, and then Emily was like, Stella. I was like, oh, so that's where the name came from. It's actually beautiful because like literally the moment he names it, it's like, oh yeah, and finds out she's pregnant with Stella. I thought that was a beautiful situation, because Stella's the oldest, I'm pretty sure. But regardless, it was just, coming full circle, because even at the end, Stella was like, oh, her, what's her name? And Walker kind of smiling a little bit and then putting the bobblehead there. I also love that he's making August, because it's like, yeah, you're not getting out of trouble. You were drinking. So yeah, you're going to have to run it off, keep pace with the car and everything. So I thought it was a nice, like, heartwarming moment, because it also shows cases, like, despite everything, him being the tough parent, that, showing his kids that he does love them. It is tough love, But it is showing that also their relationship is getting better, So I think that's kind of, I thought that was a very like sweet ending all around. So I'm very interested to see where all this takes us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.